Imagine if the first 5 minutes of your morning is quietly determining how close you feel to God for the rest of the day. Imagine if before you even get out of bed, before your feet touch the floor, before you brush your teeth, you are already losing spiritual battles you didn't even know was happening. What if the thing causing it is sitting right beside your pillow, not because it's evil, not because technology is evil, but because of what it does to your attention? Because here is a thought that shook me when I first realized it. The enemy rarely starts by stealing your faith. He starts by stealing your focus. And if that's true, then some Christians are entering every morning feeling distracted before they even speak a single word to God. Now, if that sounds dramatic, stay with me, because at the end of this video, I am going to give you a simple prayer you can pray every morning before touching your phone. But before I do that, we are going to uncover a hidden spiritual principle that changed the way I think about prayer forever. And I have a feeling that once you see it, you will never look at your morning the same way again. If you are new here, subscribe and join us. Every week we uncover biblical truths that help believers grow closer to God in practical ways. Now let me ask you something. What if the real reason your prayer life feels weak has nothing to do with prayer? That sounds strange, doesn't it? But hear me out. A few years ago, I noticed something. In the mornings, when I reached for my phone first, prayer felt harder. Not impossible, just harder. My mind felt crowded. My thoughts felt scattered. My spirit felt noisy. I would sit down to pray and suddenly remember messages, deadlines, problems, things that I needed to do, and I couldn't understand why. Then one day I asked myself a question. What entered my mind before God did? That question changed everything, because maybe the first battle of the day is not temptation. Maybe it's influence. Maybe it's attention. Maybe it's something far more subtle. Here's a quote I want you to remember. Whoever captures your attention often shapes your direction. But it gets even deeper than that, because this battle doesn't begin with smartphones. It began in the garden. Most people think the story of Eden is about a fruit, but I want you to look again. Before there was a forbidden fruit, there was a conversation. Before there was disobedience, there was attention. Before Eve reached for the fruit, she listened. Think about that. Satan didn't start by taking Eve's obedience. He started by taking Eve's attention, because attention always comes before agreement. That's why the serpent didn't force her. He spoke to her. He directed her focus. And once he captured her attention, everything else became easier. Now pause for a second. What if that's still how spiritual battle works? What if the enemy doesn't necessarily need you to worship? What if he's satisfied with your attention? What if he knows wherever your attention goes, your thoughts follow? Where your thoughts go, your emotions follow. And where your emotions go, your life follows. Suddenly, this isn't just about phones anymore. It's about influence. But we are still not at the deepest part yet, because the Old Testament reveals another clue that almost nobody talks about. When Israel was wandering through the wilderness, God sent manna from heaven. Every morning, not every week, not every month, every morning. And most Christians stop there. But look closer. God instructed them to gather it early morning before anything else. Why? Because God wasn't just feeding them. He was training them to receive from heaven before dealing with earth. But this is the part almost nobody notices. God wouldn't allow them to store yesterday's manna. If they tried, it spoiled. Think about the scriptural implication. Yesterday's manna couldn't sustain today's journey. Yesterday's encounter could not sustain today's battle. Yesterday's revelation could not sustain today's assignment, which means God was teaching Israel a principle many believers struggle with today. You need fresh bread for a fresh day. You need fresh grace for fresh battles. You need fresh strength for fresh temptations. Maybe that's why some believers feel spiritually weak. Not because they don't love God enough, not because they have abandoned Him, but because they are trying to fight today's battle with yesterday's manna. And here's another quote, noteworthy. God gives daily bread because yesterday's bread was never meant to carry today's burden. Now we are about to discover the most dangerous part of all, and honestly, this was the revelation that convinced me the most. Most people think checking their phones first thing in the morning costs them time. I don't think that's the biggest cost. The biggest cost is that it trains your heart to live in reaction instead of direction. Think about what happens. You wake up, a message appears, you react. A notification appears, you react. A headline appears, you react. Someone's opinion appears, you react. Someone's emergency appears, you react. Before you prayed, before you worshipped, before you heard from God, your emotional state is already being controlled by external forces. And here's the disturbing part. Many Christians spend the rest of the day trying to recover from a battle they lost in the first 5 minutes of the day. What if your phone isn't just stealing your time? What if it's stealing your spiritual sensitivity? What if the greatest threat to your prayer isn't sin? What if it's noise? And that leads us to one of the most overlooked stories in the Bible. When Samuel heard from God, he thought it was Eli. Most sermons stopped there, but think about how strange that is. Samuel was hearing from God, but was misidentifying the source. He heard the voice correctly, he recognized the speaker incorrectly. And I wonder how many believers are doing that same thing today. God nudges them to call someone, they dismiss it. God prompts them to pray, they ignore it. God gives them peace, they call it coincidence. God gives them wisdom, they call it intuition. Maybe God is speaking more often than you think. Maybe we've just become so surrounded by noise that we've forgotten what His voice sounds like, because the more crowded a room becomes, the harder it is to hear a whisper. Now, we're finally ready for the revelation that we've been moving towards. The reason your morning matters so much isn't because searching your phone is a sin. It is because the first voice often becomes the strongest voice. That's it. That's the principle. The first influence often becomes the dominant influence. The first conversation often shapes every conversation that follows, which means every morning there's a battle, not for your schedule, not for your phone, not even for your time. There is a battle for who gets the first seat at the table of your mind. That is why this prayer we're about to pray now matters. Not because the words are magical, but because the decision is so powerful. And here's the prayer. Father, thank you for the gift of another day. Before the world tells me who I should be, remind me of who I already am in you. Before notifications demand my attention, let your presence capture my heart. Before fear speaks, let faith speak louder. Before anxiety speaks, let your promise speak louder. Before the options of people reach my ears, let your truth settle in my soul. Guide my mind from distractions. Guide my heart from fear. Guide my spirit from every voice that pulls me away from you. Give me today's bread, today's wisdom, today's strength, today's grace. Order my steps, direct my thoughts. Help me recognize your voice throughout this day. Before any other voice speaks, in the name of Yeshua, my Lord and my Savior, so be it. Tomorrow morning, I want you to try something. A simple experiment, 5 minutes, that's all. Don't touch your phone. Don't open social media. Don't check messages. Give God the first 5 minutes, then come back and tell me what happened. Because many of you are going to discover something surprising. Not that God suddenly started speaking, but that He may have been speaking all along. If you are watching this and prayer itself has become difficult, then the next video you need to watch is the one on the screen right now. And it's titled, If You Can't Pray Anymore, Start From Here. That video was made specifically for believers who feel spiritually dry, distant from God, or unable to pray the way they used to, or the way they want to. Click it right after this video, and before you leave, be sure to like this video and share it to someone you care about. And subscribe to this channel right now to get more edifying videos like this. And put in the comment below, God gets the first voice. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, let love guide you, not fear.